Welcome to New York Mets baseball. Participating advertisers are Budweiser, the king of beers. Reach for that distinctively clean, crisp taste that says Budweiser. For all you do, this Bud's for you. Manufacturers Hanover Trust. Our facts make your money worth more. Datsun, who proudly presents the all-new Nissan Sentra. Once you test drive the new Nissan Sentra, you'll know why you need this car. Burger King, where you can get those juicy flame-broiled burgers that are never fried. Aren't you hungry for Burger King now? U.S. Today brings you the USA in an entirely different way. Express mail, next day service from the post office. Overnight, we make you look good for less. Today, the New York Mets are playing the Philadelphia Phillies here in Shea Stadium. The starting pitchers for this game: last year's Cy Young Award winner, Steve Carlton. Carlton won 23 and lost 11 with an earned run average of 3.10. And pitching for the New York Mets, Tom Seaver. Tom, an off year last year, won 5 and lost 13, was plagued by injuries. Had an earned run average of 5.50, and he is starting this game here today. Hi, everybody. This is Ralph Kiner with Steve Zabriskie and Tim McCarver from Shea Stadium on opening day. What a beautiful day we have for baseball here today. We have a near-capacity crowd. They're still trying to get in the ballpark, and we're set for what is, to me, Tim McCarver, one of the most thrilling days of any baseball player's life.
Well, it really is, and not only that, you talk about dream matchup. Steve Carlton against Tom Seaver. I guess it would be appropriate to talk about Steve Carlton and let Steve handle Tom Seaver. I caught Lefty for a number of years, of course, and the guy has won 285 ball games lifetime. He has 2 losing records against 2 ball clubs, the New York Mets and the Cincinnati Reds. He's 27 and 31 lifetime against the Mets, and 3 and 11 lifetime against Tom Seaver. It should be very, very interesting.
And, Steve, what about Tom Seaver?
Well, I think everyone has to be happy with the progress Tom made in spring. The big question, of course, was whether or not he would start the game. A week or so ago, he pulled a muscle, about 10 days ago, I guess, in his leg, and he's had some problems with muscle pulls in his legs before, but he's come back. He felt no stiffness Sunday after throwing Saturday for about 20 minutes, and certainly they wanted him to be here on opening day pitching against Carlton. If everybody can get in this ballpark with the traffic jam around Shea, we're going to have a capacity crowd here, and the main reason for that is that Tom Seaver is pitching for the New York Mets again. The feelings that are going through Seaver's mind and are in his heart right now are really mixed. He talked last night at the Boosters Banquet about the great memories he has and a little touch of sadness, too, about coming back here to Shea. I know that the adrenaline is really going to be pumping through his veins, and if that has anything to do with it, he should have a great outing because the adrenaline will be there.
Well, when he came in from the bullpen after warming up, the fans here gave him a standing ovation. When he was introduced in the pregame ceremonies, you couldn't even get his name out as everybody anticipated the introduction and again gave him a standing ovation. So Tom Seaver in his return to the New York Mets, and the Mets have taken the field, and the field in great condition, and we're in for quite a day here. We have Tom Seaver, who has won 3 Cy Young Awards, going against Steve Carlton, who has won 4. Never in the history of baseball have so many Cy Young awards been on a field at the same time. And right here is Mayor Cox, and he will be throwing out first ball, I believe, or Governor Cuomo.
I think the governor's trying to get in the ballpark, Ralph. I think he's had some problems with the capacity crowd that we have here at Shea. A chance for it to be the all-time biggest crowd.
And defensively for the New York Mets, Dave Kingman at first base, Brian Giles at second base. Over at the shortstop position, we have Bob Baylor. Playing third base, Hubie Brooks. Out in left field, George Foster. The center fielder is Mookie Wilson. And the right fielder, Mike Howard. The catcher, Ron Hodges. This is the first time he's ever caught an opening day game. And Tom Seaver on the mound. Tom will tie a record with his first pitch of pitching in opening day games. He will tie Walter Johnson. This will be his 14th.
And quickly, Ralph, the Philadelphia Phillies lineup. Pete Rose unusually playing right field and leading off. Joe Morgan, the second baseman, batting second. Gary Matthews in left field and batting third. Mike Schmidt, the cleanup hitter, playing third base. Tony Perez reunited with his old teammates, batting fifth and playing first. Bo Diaz, the catcher, hitting sixth. Ivan De Jesus hitting seventh. Switch hitting Bob Dernier hitting eighth. And Steve Carlton, the pitcher, batting ninth.
So Pete Rose, the leadoff batter for the Philadelphia Phillies, introduced to the crowd here today. And Pete Rose, a man who has been at bat more times than any player in the history of the major leagues. And he will add to that this year. The all-time record for base hits is 4,191, and he has a couple more years, if he can last that long, Tim, to do it. What do you think his chances are?
Well, he's only 323 hits behind Ty Cobb, in the way Pete got 172 last year, so 2 years is about on time. There is no question in my mind that if he keeps breathing, he will break Ty Cobb's record.
And, of course, the big question this year is whether or not he'll be able to play every ball game. He wants to. The manager says he wants to rest him. He's missed only 80 games in his 20-year career. And Seaver's first pitch, ball one. So Pete Rose, who last missed a ball game back on September 1st, 1978, starting the game off right here. There's Seaver's first time. Seaver with 264 wins, 156 losses. One of a few pitchers who has won over 100 games more than he has lost. That's a good fastball, Tim. Good spot for him.
He went away with his first fastball and in with Pete. I think it's interesting to see the Met outfield. They are shaded around toward left field now.
That puts a count at 2 balls and 2 strikes. In my opinion, Tim McCarver, you saw Rose, of course, broadcasting for the Phillies last year. He is a better hitter from the left-hand side of the plate.
There's no question about it. Even though last year he had 272 from the left side and 270 from the right side, he went through the first 2 months hitting a paltry 150 from the right side. Much stronger hitter from the left side.
Likes to slice the ball toward left field. And there he tried to, but fouled it off, and Seaver again with a good fastball. Matt Corrales, the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies, in his second year. He's sort of a disciplinarian, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's a macho man.
Tom Seaver with a good breaking pitch gets Pete Rose on a strikeout. Something you don't see often.
I'll tell you what he did. Pete only struck out 34 times last year and 645 at that. Tom Seaver, it appeared, took something off a breaking ball, and a lot of hitters will give up on a pitch like this. Looked like a backup slider that went down very, very well, and he's got Pete Rose, first strikeout victim for 83.
And Tom Seaver with over 3,000 strikeouts in his career. 10 times he struck out 200 or more batters, something no one else has ever done. And here's another great one, and Joe Morgan, he takes the first pitch for ball one. Morgan last year with the Comeback Player of the Year award, batted .289 for the San Francisco Giants. He's got tons of stats.
And I think he's probably most proud of his last at bat. That was a 3-run homer that knocked the Dodgers out of the Western Division of the National League last year.
And the pitch thrown by Terry Forster, who's now with the Atlanta Braves.
That's one thing you don't see too often. Joe Morgan going for a 2-0 bad pitch.
Morgan has walked more than any active player in the National League, and he is high on the list, 5th on the all-time list in walks. And now Seaver behind with a count of 3 balls and 1 strike. Seaver's record against Philadelphia, 27 victories and only 12 losses.
Had some good movement away. What an experienced hitter like Joe Morgan looks for as we look at Gene Dussaint and George Bamberger in the background talking with hitting coach Jimmy Fry. But what a good hitter looks for is a pitch that he can really drive. Joe Morgan really couldn't drive that pitch. And as I said, it's a little bit of a surprise to see Morgan swing at 2 bad balls like that.
Shows a little anxiety there.
Yep.
Oh, that was close. I don't know how you can take that pitch.
I don't either. Very, very close pitch. Doug Harvey, home plate umpire, says it was down. The umpires, by the way, Doug Harvey behind the plate as we look at Tom Seaver in this pitch. It looked a little low. Doug is an excellent umpire. First base umpire Jerry Dale. At second base, Frank Pulley. And at third base, Jerry Crawford.
So Seaver working with a man on and a man who can steal bases. And Joe Morgan, in spite of his age, and Tom is not noted for a good move. So here's a good test for the catcher, Ron Hodges, as Seaver works on Joe Morgan at first base.
What you try to do as a catcher, too, Ralph, is really stay down. You don't want to come out of the chute too fast, because then if you do, you take something away from the pitcher. An umpire's got to be able to work over a catcher and not through him. There aren't too many umpires that can see through catchers.
It's a little difficult to do.
Yeah.
And Gary Matthews fouls off a fastball. Matthews is a strong hitter. Hit 281 last year with 19 home runs and 83 runs batted in. Very aggressive hitter. Doesn't take any pitches.
Contrary to Joe Morgan, Gary Matthews is just the opposite of Morgan.
And Seaver with pitch out of the strike zone. 1 ball, 1 strike.
Gary off to a great start in spring training. Hit 368 with 4 doubles, a home run, and 4 RBIs this spring.
Again, Seaver over to first base.
Tom does not have a good move to first base, but he's just letting Morgan know that he is aware that he will run. Close play there. But Tom, contrary to Steve Carlton, who has an excellent move to first, will continue to throw over there.
And it gets away from Dave Kingman, and Morgan will go down to second on the air. Morgan bluffing to go over to third base as no one is covering at second. But then going back to second base as the ball comes back into the infield.
Well, the inadvertent advantage to speed is shown right here. Thrown into the runner, Kingman stretching for it. It went between Joe Morgan's legs. Now watch Morgan go through the bag at second base. Kingman hustling over to retrieve the ball. Morgan takes the long turn around second base. Kingman has to make the hurried throw, and Seaver, of course, is there, but you always want to make the fielder throw the ball. Don't take anything for granted, and he doesn't.
And he's 39 years of age. He and Pete Rose, of course, great hustlers. So runner in scoring position, the count 1 ball, 1 strike. 1 man out, and we're just underway here in the first game of the year at Shea. And Seaver with an off-speed pitch gets the second strike. It's 1 and 2.
That slider's backing up on him. You saw Pete Rose strike out on a backup slider. And Gary Matthews, that pitch is the toughest pitch to hit in baseball, in my opinion.
And the fastball hit off the hands, and a good pitch by Seaver. And Matthews, jammed by the fastball, is thrown out at first as Morgan crosses over to third. So a runner at third with 2 men out, and the batter will be Mike Schmidt.
With 2 strikes on the hitter, that's the best time to jam a hitter. And it's Tom Seaver, who is a master on the mound at knowing situations, came in on Gary Matthews. Gary Matthews, on the other hand, is trying to protect the plate, and that means he's more vulnerable to the pitch inside.
So Seaver from the windup to one of the great hitters, and Mike Schmidt in the fastball in tight. Schmidt last year hit 280 with 35 home runs and 87 runs batted in. If you recall, it was here in this ballpark last year in the opening series that the Phillies played that Schmidt pulled a muscle in his rib cage and started to miss some action.
Batting against Randy Jones on a sinker outside. He hit a ball that could have been a triple. He wound up with a single.
And the fastball fouled back out of play.
Schmidt, of course, with arthroscopic surgery in his left knee in spring training. He only had 23 at-bats this spring. However, he did hit a robust 304 with 2 home runs and 5 RBIs. One of the quality players around, if not the best in the game all around.
Morgan at third base, and Schmidt on a check swing, and it's called a strike. So Jerry Dale at first base calling the strike on the check swing. So the count on Schmidt down 1 and 2. Schmidt has hit 349 career home runs in just a little over 10 years. gets popped up in foul territory, it'll be out of play. So it looks like, as we look at the stands, we got a sellout crowd here at Shea Stadium for the opening day. Joe Morgan on at third base. He went to second on a pickoff attempt by Seaver that was charged as an error to Tom, and moved to third on the ground out by Gary Matthews.
These fans are into it, aren't they, Ralph? Love it.
Now this is the city for baseball. 1-2, the count on Mike Schmidt. 2 men away, top of the first. And Seaver with a fastball just off the plate. It's 2-2.
Schmidt has struck out over 100 times, 6 times in his career. Struck out 107 times last year, 131 times last year.
And Seaver, of course, has struck out over 3,000 batters in his major league career. And it's again fouled back out of play. Speaking of strikeouts, Nolan Ryan, in probably his second start, will break the all-time strikeout record held by Walter Johnson.
If he starts, he's on the DL right now, is he not?
Johnson struck out 3,408 in his major league career. $3,508.
And Nolan Ryan with 3,494, only 14 behind Walter Johnson.
And a good slider popped up and playable. And Seaver works the first inning without a run, without a hit. Walked one, there was 1 error and a man left at third. And the score after 1/2 inning, the Phillies nothing, the Mets coming up. And for the Mets, it'll be Mookie Wilson, Bob Baylor, and Dave Kingman. Now here's a word from Budweiser. Defensively for the Philadelphia Phillies, Tony Perez will be at first base. Joe Morgan, the second baseman. Ivan De Jesus, the shortstop. Third baseman Mike Schmidt. Out in left field, Gary Matthews. The center fielder is Bob Dernier. And in right field, Pete Rose. The catcher, Bo Diaz. And on the mound, lefty, Steve Carlton. Carlton has won 285 games and lost 184. Also a man who has won 100 more games plus over his losses.
And the lineup for the New York Mets. Mookie Wilson leading off and playing center field. Bob Baylor, the shortstop, batting second. Dave Kingman batting third and playing first base. George Foster in the cleanup spot and playing left field. Hubie Brooks batting fifth. Right fielder Mike Howard, a rather surprise starter, batting sixth. Brian Giles, who had a great spring, batting seventh. Ron Hodges hitting eighth off the left-handed delivery of lefty. And Tom Seaver, of course, the pitcher, batting ninth. And I'll tell you one thing about Steve Carlton. He loves to work fast. Pitchers like he's double parked.
He is a very fast worker and also a great pitcher. He'll be working to Mookie Wilson, a switch hitter. Mookie last year hit .279 and set a club record for stolen bases with 58. And Carlton starts off with a fastball, and Mookie fouls it back on the bunt attempt. Well, Tim McCarver, you've caught Steve Carlton many, many times. In fact, they say when you're both gone from this world, you'll be buried 60 feet 6 inches apart.
Well, thankfully, that hadn't happened yet. Mookie Wilson doing the thing that you can do to lefty is bunt the ball to his left. He does not get over. The only thing that he doesn't do, that was his slider, of course, there. The only thing that lefty does not do well is cover first base. He has a difficult time getting over there because his momentum carries him toward third base.
And he comes back with a fastball and gets strike 3. So Carlton, who also has struck out over 3,000 batters, picks up his first victim as he strikes out Mookie Wilson.
3 straight. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night with a fastball on the outside. Not much you can do with that pitch. Perfect pitch on the outside corner.
So Carlton, in his 11th opening day assignment, he's 2-6 in opening day games, now takes on Bob Baylor. And he throws a fastball.
Yeah, Bales hurt him last year, too. He was 7 for 12 against lefty last year. And he drove in 5 runs. Good, solid ball player. Did not have a good spring, however.
So the fastball fouled away in the count. Moving along on Bob Baylor. Baylor hitting .277. 1 ball, 1 strike to count. Baylor, opposite field hitter, being played that way by the Philadelphia Phillies, and Carlton misses with a fastball.
Yeah, Gary Matthews straight away and left. If you remember last year, Baylor hurt Carlton with 2 doubles down the left field line. So Gary's not given as much this year.
This one popped up in foul territory, and it will be out of reach and out of play.
Tony Perez, part of that big red machine that won 2 consecutive world championships in 75 and 76, reunited with Pete Rose and Joe Morgan. What a great career that man has had. One of the real gentlemen of the game, too, Ralph.
And one of the great RBI men that have been playing in this game of baseball.
There are a lot of gentlemen, but not too many RBI men.
I'll go for the RBI guy. 2-2, the count. And there's his favorite pitch. It's popped up. Mike Schmidt makes it look easy, and 2 men away. Talking about that pitch, Tim McCarver. Low inside curveball, or slider, really, to a right-hand batter. He just eats you up with that pitch.
Well, you know, some pitchers have a sinker and a slider. Carlton has 2 pitches in one. His slider both sinks and slides. It serves the illusion of a strike. And the 2 people that unusually come into play when he's pitching is his third baseman and the first base umpire. The first base umpire because of all the check swings that he has out of right-handed hitters.
And Dave Kingman gets a curveball, and it's ball 1. Kingman hit only .204 last year, but he led the league in home runs with 37, and he drove in 99.
And he is a devastating off-speed hitter. You saw the curveball, but lefty only showed him that pitch. He will not throw Kingman a curveball for a strike. At least that's his intention.
Comes back with a fastball and gets a strike. One of the tough things about hitting is that a pitcher will show you a pitch to make you think he'll throw it to you and then not do it, not put it in the strike zone.
That's what setting up a hitter is all about. You can't just discard any of your 3 pitchers.
There's a good breaking ball there, but out of the strike zone, it's 2-1. The Phillies are putting on the so-called Kingman shift with the second baseman on the shortstop side, but Joe Morgan plays it differently. He plays a shallow shortstop when he moves over there, and they have one deep back in the grass. And there's that good pitch, slider right there low and inside.
And out of the strike zone. About 70% or so of Carlton's sliders are out of the strike zone as we look at that shift. And there's what you were talking about, Ralph. Joe Morgan, very shallow. And the reason he's shallow is because he's got a second baseman's arm.
Ooh, close. And it's on the outside corner, and strike 3. So Carlton strikes out 2. Both looking, both with fastballs. And he works a 1-2-3 inning. And the score at the end of 1, it's the Phillies nothing, the Mets nothing. Coming up for the Phillies, Tony Perez, Bo Diaz, and Ivan De Jesus. Now here's a word from Dotson. Tony Perez, the leadoff for the Philadelphia Phillies. Tony last year with the Boston Red Sox. And Tom Seaver working his second inning, starts off with a breaking ball. Perez hit .260 last year. And he had only 6 home runs and 31 RBIs, but he was at bat only 196 times.
Yeah, Tony, you got to remember 3 years ago drove in 105 runs for those Boston Red Sox when Ralph Houck took over. He went with the youth movement, and eventually Tony was gone and signed with the Phillies as a free agent. We talked about his spring. What a spring he had. Batting .386, 3 home runs, and 15 RBIs this spring. He can hit.
And there's the proof of it right there. A line shot to left field. Foster comes up with the ball, gets it back in, and that is the first hit of the game. Tony Perez.
You know, Dave Kingman's going to hold Tony on. Tony has never been fleet of foot, and Dave ought to be playing behind him because you got right here one of the best hit and run men and RBI men too on this Philly ball club. This guy can hit the ball on the ground to the right side better than any right-handed hitter I've ever seen, with the exception of Dick Groat.
And we're talking about Bo Diaz, who last year hit .288 with 18 home runs and 85 runs batted in.
Dave is behind Tony at first base now.
Tony with only 48 career stolen bases, so he is not a base stealer.
Shortstop will be covering if they do elect to send Perez.
And Seaver gets a strike.
The reason for that, obviously, is Bo goes so well the other way that you want your shortstop to cover in case Perez goes. If this is a ball, Perez will be running on the next pitch.
And it is popped up on the first base side. Brian Giles and Kingman there, and Kingman makes the call and catch. Perez has to hold at first base on the out. And Tom Seaver now working with one out, a runner on first base here in the top of the second. No score in the ball game. And the batter coming up is shortstop Ivan De Jesus. De Jesus last year a .239 hitter, coming over to the Phillies from the Cubs, and last year he had 3 home runs and drove in 59.
Yeah, that was his all-time high RBI total. Only 3 shortstops in the league drove in more runs than Ivan last year.
This could be a double play. There's one, and the other as UB Brooks turns it into a double play, going from Brooks to Brian Giles to Kingman, and the side retire. No runs, 1 hit, 1 error, and no one left on base. And the score at the end of 1.5, it's the Phillies nothing and the Mets nothing. Coming up for the Mets, George Foster, Hubie Brooks, and Mike Howard. Now here's a word from Burger King. While Steve Carlton, known as Lefty to his friends, getting set for the second inning, and he's waiting. He's ready to go.
And he doesn't like to wait either, Ralph, as the Mets are going to send up George Foster, Hubie Brooks, and Mike Howard.
And George Foster will make anybody wait. How about the time last year when Foster broke up the concentration of Christensen, Larry Christensen, when he was working on a perfect ball game against the Mets?
After retiring 20 in a row, as a matter of fact, George Foster eventually doubled Christensen and the Mets, or I should say the Mets tied Larry Christensen and went on to lose that ball game in extra innings.
Foster in and out of the batter's box.
George having a good spring, hitting .338, 4 dingers, and 10 RBIs. And as Ralph just alluded to George's waiting, he is taking his time getting in the box. Carlton retired the Mets in order in the first inning, striking out 2. Fastball misses outside, 1-0 to George Foster. Outfield shaded to left field. Gary Matthews very deep. Slider. Base hit to left field. The first hit of the 1983 season for the Mets and for George Foster. Looked like a slider that jammed George, and that's the reason a lot of power hitters get a lot of those chinkers in front of the outfielders, because they are back, Ralph.
Okay, here it is again. The slider in on his fist. He hits it off the trademark, and it's not hit hard enough to stay in the air long enough for Matthews to catch it. And Foster, who will be looking for a good start after last year, off to a base hit.
And Hubie Brooks lines one foul. Hit very hard, but foul to left field. 0-1 to Hubie Brooks. Hubie also a good spring. 280, drove in 10 runs. Trying to regain that form of 2 years ago when he hit .307 for the Mets. There's the good move by Carlton.
And a good move like that is usually a balk move. He gets a lot of balks called on.
I've been trying to explain that move for years. Now I'm convinced it's a balk since I'm on the other side. Good play by Diaz, scooping it up. 1-1 to Hubie.
Well, Carlton says he learned that move from Jerry Kuzman.
That's
of course,
exactly
Jerry
right.
had a good one.
I remember the night we went out to dinner. Kuzman, Joe Torre, and Steve Carlton and I. And Kuzman worked with Lefty on pointing his foot right at the hitter, or right at the base runner. Fastball unusually inside. Carlton didn't come in too much to right-handed hitters with that fastball. 2-1 to Hubie Brooks. But Jerry Kuzman, who used to have that knack for pointing that foot right at the runner, said that stops the runner at first base and really improved Carlton's move to first. 3-1 to Hubie Brooks.
Well, Carlton worked a perfect first inning when he struck out 2 of the 3 batters he faced. Now working with a runner on first and no one out here in the second, and behind 3-1.
Hubie will look for a pitch to pull. He's been pulling the ball much better. And George Foster just back.
And there's no way George should get picked off first, because he is not going anywhere.
That's right. Just like in softball, hug the bag. Infield in double play depth. DeJesus shaded towards second. Big hole between short and third. Hubie fouls it off. 3-2. And Kingman probably will be, or Foster probably will be going at first base.
Well, it depends a lot on the manager's strategy. By moving the runner, and Foster is not fast, he'll hope to stay out of the double play on a ground ball.
And as you said, the last pitch, George Foster has to make sure Carlton pitches. You can't get picked off here.
Well, he got a late start as he was running on the pitch, and Hubie fouling the ball off, so Foster back to first base.
Yeah, you're going to get a late start. You're really not running to steal the bag. You are running in anticipation of Hubie Brooks making contact. The impassive Carlton looks on. Slider, double play ball. Schmidt hurried to throw. Morgan, and Perez drops the ball. George Foster, because he was running, was bearing down on Morgan. A weak throw by Morgan to first, and Brooks is saved.
Let's look at it again now. Morgan becomes a little suspect at his age about making a double play, and right here he gets nothing on the throw to first base. It's in the dirt, and then Tony Perez can't make it. Here's an angle as Schmidt starts it. Now Foster, because he was running, is there in time to give Morgan some difficulty, and the ball is not handled at first. So the Mets stay out of the double play.
Mike Howard looks at Carlton throw to first base, and Hubie back safely. Mike hit .211 in spring training. A bit of a surprise starter today, playing right field. The fastball strike, 0-1 to Mike Howard.
They asked Howard how he handled Steve Carlton. He'd been against him about 5 times. He said he blew me out every time, but I'm going to try and change it. Howard last year, .286 in 332 at-bats.
Hubie a mild threat to run at first base. A curveball strike, and Mike Howard in the hole, 0-2. Very difficult assignment for a young hitter is Steve Carlton.
Well, he's got to be nervous. Big
One
load.
out, bottom of the second.
Got a big load in his shoulders.
Fastball misses away, 1-2 to Mike. Mike, a switch hitter, hit a pinch hit home run against the Phillies here last year against Ron Reed. Game in which the Mets lost 2-1. Steve Carlton, the winning pitcher. Slider battled off. Perez over near the stands, no play. 1-2. The count remains the same to Mike Howard. 0-0 ball game. Both pitchers in complete control. Tom Seaver allowing 1 hit, as has Carlton. The Mets have committed 1 error, the Phillies 9.
Well, the chance of a no-hitter on opening day, at least here in this ballpark, down the drain.
Breaking ball, strike 3. Looked like a curveball from Carlton. Records his 3rd strikeout, and I guess it's a bad sign, particularly because all we're taking.
Ooh. Well, that's a nasty curveball right there, and it seems like when you're a rookie or you're trying to make the ball club, they make all kinds of pitches like that on you.
Well, Carlton can certainly do it. So there are 2 out here in the bottom of the second. Hubie Brooks remains at first, and Brian Giles steps up. Brian hit only .210 last year, but of course this year in spring training he was the Mets leading hitter, batting a robust .389. Throw to first. Brooks back in time.
One of the great trivia questions, only one time in the history of baseball, Major League Baseball, has a team come into a ball game and their batting average never changed. Everybody going in and coming out with the same average.
A bunt by Giles. Forget it. Base hit. If it stays fair, just fair. Oh, baby. Nice play by Giles with Schmidt back.
Well, Giles with a great spring. And here he lays down a perfect bunt. Gets a fastball, and it is just letter perfect.
I guess the purist would say that Brian should be swinging away. That time that was 2 out and a left-handed hitter. But nonetheless, he lays down a blueprint of a bunt. That's CIA material right there. Brian Giles, first base hit at 83.
Now the pressure on Ron Hodges, who is catching against the left-hand pitcher. rather than a right-hand batter.
Fastball outside, 1-0 to Ronnie.
George Bamberger explained it by saying against Carlton, it doesn't really make any difference whether you're a righty or a lefty.
Doesn't do much for your confidence, does it?
Well, he might be right, though.
Ronnie, as you see, batting .246 last year. Carlton bluffing Hubie Brooks back to second. Obviously, it's not a balk. Pitcher can commit himself to second or third from the stretch and doesn't have to throw. Brian Giles at first, Hubie at second. Slider strike. 1-1 to Ron Hodges.
Getting back to that question, the trivia question, the only time batting averages didn't change all the way through the team batting order was when Bob Feller pitched a no-hitter on opening day. They all started at 0-0-0, and after the game was over, they ended at 0-0-0.
Back in 1940, as a matter of fact, he's the only pitcher ever to have pitched a no-hitter on opening day.
And it was a 4-0 victory over the Detroit Tigers.
1-2 to Ron Hodges. And you really have to protect your the plate with 2 strikes against Carlton. Hubie Brooks at second, Giles at first. Carlton will not come in on a left-handed hitter at any time. Seaver on deck. Slider, nice play by Diaz, holding the runners. And I'll tell you that there are short hops, and there are other plays that bounce in front of the plate. Those are the most difficult to stop. Great play.
Boy, he did a great job blocking that ball. Diaz, of course, taking over the catching duties from Bob Boone. Boone caught so many years so well for the Philadelphia Phillies.
I caught one right on the throat in 1979 on a pitch about like that from the delivery of Carlton. 2-2 to Hodges. Slider fouled off nicely. Protecting the plate is Ron Hodges.
That had to be devastating. When you can't talk, you're in deep trouble.
How true. Macho manager, as we said. I'll tell you, chewing tobacco's one thing, but when you light it first, that corrupts.
He was a former catcher in the major leagues.
Tough dude right there. Ronnie Hodges battling Carlton nicely. Fouls off his second in a row.
He's doing a good job battling Carlton. He's a little overmatched right here, but he's really fighting him right down the line. Hodges doesn't catch much against left-hand pitching. He was forced into catching the games last year when John Stearns got hurt. Did a good job, and now trying to battle here against the toughest pitcher in the National League.
Struck out 3 times in a row once against Carlton last year. 2-2 pitch. Foul, wickedly passed first. A hanging curveball by Carlton. And if both Diaz and lefty were to have that do over again, they wouldn't have thrown that pitch. It's a dangerous pitch to a left-handed hitter because of the possibility to hang that pitch. And you can hang the slider and get away with it because it's got a lot of action on it.
A little more speed.
Right. 2 out, 2-2. Deuces are wild here in the second inning. Uncharacteristically, Carlton shaking off Diaz, taking too much time. Looks like a slider again. 2 3s. We'll see. Fastball struck him out. Struck him out, taking. All 4 strikeouts Carlton has recorded have been taking for the Mets in the second. No runs, 2 hits. There were no errors and 2 left on. At the end of 1.5 innings of play, it's the Phillies nothing and the Mets nothing. And now a word from Manufacturers Hanover. 3rd inning baseball. Tim McCarver along with Ralph Kiner, and in the wings, Steve Zabriskie. Steve will join us in the 4th inning as Tom Seaver, who has pitched 1-hit baseball, will be facing Bob Dernier and Steve Carlton. Then the top of the order, Pete Rose. Interesting experiment with young Bob Dernier. He hit left-handed all spring, and you will find the outfield very, very short. Seaver looking around, and Bob Baylor, the shortstop, over in the hole between 3rd and 2nd base. And Dernier squares the bunt. Counts 1-0.
And they call him White Lightning. He can run.
Stole 18 bases in a row right out of the chute last year. Fastball low. Tom Seaver can ill afford to give a base on balls to a man who stole 42 bases last year. Bob Dernier.
Their only problem with him is trying to find a way to get him on first base, and he's gone to that switch hitting.
You can't steal first, can you? 2-0 to Dernier. Little chopper. Seaver's going to have to hurry. Nice throw, nice play. Nice play by Kingman also. And they just nipped the speedy Dernier at first.
Good idea of his speed as you look at it again. And right here you have to worry about Seaver coming off the mound. He has had that leg with the pull muscle, and that's how you can do it, coming off the mound, stopping and making this play. But he gets set nicely and gets it off to first base in time.
I think the biggest concern, as we see the infielders converging with Tom around the mound, the biggest concern is that left thigh on a play like that, Ralph. Tom, of course, nursing that left thigh, appears not to have injured it or re-injured it. And Carlton, the hitter, lefty, batting .218 last year. A very, very formidable hitter. Fouls this one off. One of the most interesting trivia questions. Ralph, last year, the home run leader in the league hit lower than the Cy Young Award winner. There's a slider, 1-1. Dave Kingman leading the league in home runs and a .204 average. Carlton hit .218. Was that ever done before?
I would have to say no.
Sliced down the left field line. Nice play by Foster, who was playing him that way. You know, it's been done twice before. In 1970, Johnny Bench hit .293 and 45 home runs. And Bob Gibson.
Here's a swing by Carlton. He shows good power as he just flicks at that ball and hits it into the corner in left field.
Bob Gibson won the Cy Young Award that year, hitting .303. Back in 1959, Harmon Killebrew led the American League in home runs and batted .242. And Early Wynn won the Cy Young Award and hit .247. Kind of an unusual thing to have done 3 times. Right?
It is amazing. Well, one year, Walter Johnson hit .444.
Oh, my goodness. Well, here's a guy who that wouldn't be unusual to. Pete Rose, who struck out on a call strike, or swinging strike, I beg your pardon, the first time up.
What was this guy?
Well, there's another one of the nostalgic Mets, and Tug McGraw sitting there in the middle.
Speaking of trivia, Frank Edwin McGraw. Rose tops one, and the count evens at 1. Kingman retrieving that ball. The infielders usually try to keep that ball in play, especially when Seaver has retired 2 in a row with the same ball. One of those insignificant things that happen in this great game of ours. 2 out, nobody on here in the 3rd inning. 0-0 ball game. Classic matchup, Seaver and Carlton. Oh, almost hit him. He's dancing out of the way, running to 3rd, and making the turn and coming back. Obviously, Tom not throwing at him.
And right here, a look at the footwork of Pete Rose, who plays tennis in the wintertime to keep in shape.
Gene Kelly couldn't have done it better. And Seaver behind in the count to Pete, 3-1. Pete with over 3,000 games played, a litany of records that probably he knows best. Left center, Foster in, and makes the catch. Rose hit it well, but right at George Foster in left field. Tom Seaver, another strong inning for the Phillies in the 3rd inning. No runs, no hits, no errors, and nobody left on at the end of 2.5 innings of play. It's the Phillies nothing and the Mets nothing.
Hi, I'm Steve Zabriskie. The Mets' 1983 season gets off to a flying start with a 6-game homestand against the Philadelphia Phillies and the world champion St. Louis Cardinals. After 2 games against the Phils, including the opener Tuesday afternoon, April 5th, and a day game on Thursday, Bruce Sutter, Keith Hernandez, Ozzie Smith, and the rest of the world champion Cardinals arrive at Shea for 4 big games. The series begins with the season's first night game on Friday, April 8th at 8:05, and then it's calendar weekend. All fans attending either Saturday afternoon or the first doubleheader of the year on Sunday, April 10th, will receive the Mets' full-color 1983 team calendar, courtesy of the Mets and Getty Oil.
The calendar contains photos of your favorite Mets, the season schedule, and other interesting information. For ticket information regarding these or any other future Mets games, call 212-507-TIX. That's 507-TIXX. Don't miss the action because now the fun starts.
Well, Ralph Kiner, an interesting trio talking there. Bobby Valentine, the third base coach, Bamberger, the manager, and Doug Harvey, the home plate umpire. What are they talking about, you think?
Well, there's a little question of whether or not Carlton stays within the rules of pitching. And, Tim, you know more about that than I do, but he's been accused of doctoring a baseball.
Yes, he has. As most pitchers at one time or another have. Tom Seaver, a big hand. Let's hear it.
They're talking to the right man. Doug Harvey threw Don Sutton out of a ball game for doctoring a baseball, and that's not too usual for an umpire to do that.
Carlton has been accused of doing it with pine tar. Some pitchers cut it. As a matter of fact, Jim Fry, who was the manager of the Kansas City Royals in '80, came out in the 8th inning of Game 6 in the World Series. Tom swings and misses 1-1, and made Carlton wash his hands off. Lefty was ineffective that inning, walking the first 2 hitters. Pops this one up, Seaver does. Perez, does he have room? Yes. 1 out.
So Tom Seaver, not too bad a hitter for a pitcher, goes back to the bench, and we have Mookie Wilson coming up. You're not saying, Tim McCarver, that players will take advantage of the rules here and there in the Major League?
They'll do anything they can.
Speaking of that, Gaylord Perry will be pitching opening
That's
day.
right. Against the Yankees. Gator and Perry go at it tonight in the Kingdome in Seattle. Mookie Wilson was called out on strikes in the first inning and takes a strike. 0-1 to Mookie with 1 out and nobody on here in the 3rd inning.
On the scoreboard, Pittsburgh and their schedule in St. Louis being held up because of rain.
Slider foul back. Wilson in the hole, 0-2.
Mookie was struck out his first time up. He was caught looking at a fastball. Now with a count of 0-2, he's in a tough spot here.
Fastball, he struck him out. So Mookie Wilson has faced 6 pitches against Carlton, and he struck out twice. 5th strikeout for Carlton.
And again, he gets him with a fastball. Last year, Mookie struck out over 100 times, and that's too much for a leadoff batter.
Struck out 8 times this spring and walked only once. 2 out, nobody on. Bob Baylor, the shortstop. Popped to Schmidt at 3rd in the 1st inning. Fastball outside. 1-0 to Bob Baylor. There's a slider strike, 1-1. We mentioned the tough spring that Bob Baylor had. He hit only .098, 7 hits and 59 trips. Attempts to bunt on Carlton. The second, Mookie tried to push one past lefty toward first base in the 1st inning, and Baylor tries to do the same. 1-2 to Baylor. Tom Seaver looking intently on.
Well, there's a great shot of concentration, isn't it?
Bales fouls this one off. 1-2, the count remains the same.
Don McMahon, the pitching coach, well-renowned pitching coach, said that Tom Seaver was the only pitcher, and this goes back about 10 years, that could concentrate fully for 9 innings in the major leagues. And that time, Bob Gibson was in the major leagues. I'd have to put Gibson in there. He had tremendous concentration.
Yes, he did.
And Carlton, too.
Of course, he was such a tenacious competitor. I don't think you think of Gibson in concentrating terms. Counts full, 3-2 to Bob Baylor.
Well, Carlton keeps his concentration.
Yeah, lefty, I think you can parallel with Tom on that particular point. Pops it up. So Diaz giving chase, and it's out of play.
Baylor very happy about the fact that he will be playing one position. At least that's the plan at this point.
Yeah, Bob can be used in center field, 3rd base, right field, 2nd base, and plays all positions well. good ball player. Fouls this one off. Count still 3-2 to Bob Baylor. No score here in the third. Tim McCarver along with Ralph Kiner. What a gorgeous day for baseball. About 60 degrees, sunshine brightly. Capacity crowd, and I love it.
That's the way it should be.
Bob Baylor hanging tough. He's fouled off 4 in a row against Carlton. The Kong on deck. Pops this one to center field. Dernier a couple of steps to his left, and Carlton retires the Mets in order for the second time in 3 innings. For the Mets in the third, no runs, no hits, no errors, nobody left on. At the end of 3, 0-0. Coming up for the Phillies, Joe Morgan, Gary Matthews, and Mike Schmidt. And now here's a word from Getty Oil.
Well, Joe Morgan, the lead off as we go to the top of the 4th. No score. And what a ball game, Steve.
Outstanding opening day ball game, an outstanding crowd on hand, and as Tim was mentioning a moment ago, an outstanding day. You couldn't ask for any more. 41 going for the Mets and facing Joe Morgan as we start the top half of the 4th inning. And Morgan looks at ball 1. Little Joe coming over from the San Francisco Giants, where he had a great comeback year last year. Takes ball 2.
Joe Morgan has played in more games at second base than anybody in the National League history.
Joe walked and advanced to second on a throwing error by Seaver, and an attempted pickoff at first base back in the 1st inning was stranded at 3rd, as he's now ahead of Seaver. 3 balls and no strikes. And the cripple is in there. 3-1.
Morgan also holds the National League record for career walks. He has 1,710 in his major league career.
Swing and a miss. Boy, the crowd has applauded every strike that Tom Seaver has thrown this afternoon. Morgan shaking his head as he had a good rip and a good pitch. Ralph, this has to bring back great memories for you, having Tom Seaver back on the mound for the Mets.
Well, it's like old times, and this crowd here proves it.
The 3-2 pitch. Strike 3. Seaver recording his 2nd strikeout of the day. Gets Joe Morgan swinging to start the 4th inning.
And we look at it again. Seaver striking out Pete Rose on a breaking ball earlier, and now an off-speed pitch as he strikes out another tough man to strike out Joe Morgan.
And for the Phillies, Gary Matthews, the left fielder, will be the hitter. Matthews grounded out to second base his first time up in the 1st inning. Facing Seaver now with 1 out and nobody on. On the outside corner for strike 1.
And there you look at Craig Swan, who's starting this ball game. He'll pitch tomorrow, day after tomorrow, actually. Mets have tomorrow off.
Seaver very quickly out in front of Matthews. 2 strikes now. Gary, one of the most aggressive hitters in the National League, a lifetime .288 hitter. Popped up, drifting into foul territory. Kingman is over near the Mets dugout, but it'll be back about a half a dozen rows behind the dugout and out of play. And the count holds at no balls and 2 strikes on Gary Matthews. Matthews, the kind of player, Ralph, who gives 100% in the field at the plate day after day after day. There's George Bamberger.
He's a fellow that you like to have in a ball club. Atlanta had him, and somehow he got into a beef with Ted Turner, and they traded Matthews to the Phillies for Bob Walk, a pitcher.
And the trade has worked out pretty good for both clubs, as a matter of fact. Again, the 3-2 pitch from Seaver. To the shortstop. Baylor over on a routine couple of hops onto Kingman, and there's 2 gone here in the top of the 4th.
Well, that's the second time that Seaver has jammed Matthews and got him out with a fastball. First time he grounded to the second baseman, and this time to Bob Baylor, the shortstop. That brings up the dangerous Mike Schmidt.
Boy, dangerous is the word for Schmitty. Incidentally, if you have a Mike Schmidt baseball card that is put out by a company called Donruss, hang on to it, because you might have a future collector's item. It seems that instead of wearing number 20, Mike had on uniform number 37 at spring training last year when they took the picture. And it was actually the jersey of batting practice pitcher Henry King, so that could become a collector's item. Smitty was out of his uniform number for that particular baseball card. Ball 1 to Mike. Flight out to left field. Foster making a nice play back in the first inning. Hits another one to left field. Foster drifting over and back a couple of steps. Will have it easily, and the side is retired as Seaver continues to do an outstanding job here on his first assignment back with the New York Mets. We're in the middle of the 4th inning here at Shea Stadium on opening day, and it's still 0-0 between the Mets and the Phillies. Now here's a word from Burger King. Steve Zabriskie along with Ralph Kiner and Tim McCarver back at Shea Stadium with a capacity crowd on hand with this beautiful opening day. And for the Mets, as we go to the bottom half of the 4th inning with still no score in the game, it'll be King Kong, David Kingman, George Foster, and Hubie Brooks, the middle of the New York Mets batting order. As you look at the crowd here at Shea.
Kingman was struck out his first time up. Got caught looking at a fastball. 1 of 5 that Carlton has struck out in this game. Last year, Carlton led the National League in strikeouts.
And of those 5, 4 have been caught looking. Kingman, who left spring training on Sunday a day early and towed his boat home. Fouls one hard down the third base line for strike 1. There's Nelson Doubleday, chairman of the board of the New York Mets. Enjoying himself as he always does. Waiting for the ball to be retrieved in left field as Matthews had to go over and get it as it rolled all the way down to the foul pole. And now it's off the field, and Matthews returns to his position, and we're ready to play. Kingman looking at high, 1-1.
Kingman a little closer to the plate as he stands in the batter's box. Last year he was pretty far away from the plate, but against Carlton he has moved up just a shade.
A little bit up and away, and it's ball 2. David 7th on the active list as far as home runs are concerned with 329, and 39th all time behind Hank Greenberg, who he will pass along with a bunch of other people this year probably. Ooh. Really handcuffed him with a beautiful pitch. Boy, Carlton can break that off.
That is some snake.
2-2 now to Dave. Lefty going through his facial muscular gyrations as usual. Didn't have a good cut at that one and goes down swinging this time for the 2nd strikeout of Kingman in 2 trips to the plate, the 6th for Carlton.
And right here, Kingman obviously looking for a breaking ball inside, as fooled by the fastball that is outside. So Carlton having a good strikeout day, and he'll now pitch to George Foster.
George lined a single, actually almost blooped a single into left field. His first time up to lead off the 2nd inning, was then erased 5-4 as the Phillies tried to turn a double play. Up here with 1 out and nobody on. No score in the bottom of the 4th. High for ball 1. George had a great spring, and he looked good too, Ralph, didn't he?
He did have a good spring. He hit the ball well through the middle. And right there, again, a fastball. They play him straight away. Foster, for a home run type hitter, is not a pull hitter.
Good power up the middle, good power to right center. Originally came up with the San Francisco Giants. Swing and a miss on another good Carlton pitch. Lefty and Seaver both working very well here this afternoon. Both very effective. Ready for foul balls in the stands. Looking for souvenirs. Beautiful pitch by Carlton. Once again, he gets his 7th strikeout. The 5th time he has caught a New York Mets batter looking, and Foster is down for the 2nd out here in the 4th inning.
Oh, he has pinpoint control right here today. That ball right on the outside corner. Again, the fastball. And with 2 men away, Carlton has retired 7 in a row, and it's Hubie Brooks.
Hubie bounds one into the hole. Schmidt over. throws off balance, but in plenty of time, and it's another quick inning for Carlton, a 1-2-3 inning, as Brooks grounds out the third to end it. So after 4 complete innings of play, still no score here on opening day in Shea Stadium. Now here's a word from manufacturers Hanover. Back at Shea Stadium, and the governor, Ernie Cuomo, is going to send a booth.
Well, let's see. Not many ex-baseball players, professional baseball players, end up being governor of the state of New York, or any state, as a matter of fact. And, Governor, nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here. I have the same weakness as a governor and politician I had as a baseball player. I have difficulty with curveballs.
That always makes things tough. Well, it's nice to have you out here opening day. I understand you had trouble getting in the ballpark.
I did. It was a traffic problem, but I spoke to Mayor Koch about it, and he promised he'll take care of it for the next big event. It's a great day. Seaver looks terrific. It's the biggest crowd, I'm told, opening day crowd in a long, long time. And I think it signals a great, great year for New York. I'm looking forward to a World Series between the Mets and the Yankees.
Wouldn't that be something great?
That'd be great, yeah.
Governor, we should point out that you did play minor league baseball in the Pittsburgh Pirate organization.
Well, yeah, I signed a long time ago when you were a great hero of mine and still are, Ralph, and got hit in the head with a baseball down in the Georgia-Florida League, Brunswick, and got a blood clot on the brain. And as a result of that hematoma on the brain, years later, I went into politics. But, yeah, I was a baseball player.
Well, politics, of course, something like baseball, you have your good days and some bad days, too.
Oh, yes, indeed. Incidentally, that's an easy out. That's an easy out. Even the weather is made to order today. I think this is a great sport and getting greater. It always has provided us entertainment. It also provides people opportunity to move up in the society. Some of these people who have made it through baseball mightn't have had this kind of opportunity were it not for baseball. It's a great, great sport.
And there's no question about the fact that this is a perfect day for baseball, and we are on camera here as we look at the Phillies batting in the top of the 5th inning. No score in the ball game, and Governor, it's really been nice of you to come by and stop in and talk to us.
It was a pleasure to be here. I'll be here, I hope, many times this year. Good luck to all of us.
We'll look forward to seeing you again.
Ivan De Jesus, the batter now, with 1 out and 1 on. Tony Perez lined the first pitch, or rather grounded it hard up the middle for a base hit to center field to lead off here in the top of the 5th inning. Bo Diaz, the catcher, flied out to center field, and Ivan De Jesus now the batter with Perez at first and 1 out. Seaver now giving up 2 hits. Bounces away from Hodges, but not nearly far enough for any advancement, as Perez, of course, not known for great speed. It was only the 2nd hit off Seaver today. Thomas struck out 2 and walked 1. And now 4 1/3 innings work. Just off the outside corner. 2 balls and 1 strike now on De Jesus.
Oh, he has some action in the bullpen as Omby starts to warm up. Rick Omby. Seaver now working in his 5th inning. That's the longest he has pitched this spring.
De Jesus, the batter, of course, coming over from the Chicago Cubs. Kingman is playing behind Perez at first base, not holding Tony on. Well hit to center field. Mookie Wilson drifting back and a little towards left, standing, and takes it for out number 2. Perez retreats to first base, and Bob Dernier, the center fielder, will be the batter. Mookie moves so quickly, Ralph, on a ball like that, and that he gets there waiting for it when other center fielders might be still drifting back.
And Tom taking advantage of the good outfield play of Mookie Wilson, the wind blowing in from left center field, holding the ball up.
Bob Dernier, who nubbed one that Seaver made a good play on back in the 3rd inning, to open the 3rd inning, to throw him out at first base with great speed, as we've said. As you look at now, Kingman holding Perez on. With 2 out, the left-handed batting Dernier up. Takes strike 1. Dernier hit .249 last season as he fouls one into the crowd. sharply.
When you see a batter attempt to learn how to bat from the opposite side, like Denier is here, he's just learning how to hit from the left-hand side. You'll see him behind many fastballs just like that last one. Not able to get the bat out in front, and that's one of the things that you really have to learn.
Beat that one into the ground. Still no balls and 2 strikes on Denier as Seaver works out in front. Denier, originally a middle infielder, was drafted by the Reds but did not sign with them. And in '79 with the Phillies, he made the switch to center field to better utilize the great speed that he has. Swing and a miss. Seaver strikes him out to end the 5th inning. For the Phillies, no runs on 1 hit, no errors, and 1 left on base. Still no score on opening day at Shea between the Phillies and the Mets. And now here's a word from Budweiser. Well, as we go to the bottom half of the 5th inning, still no score. Mike Howard, Brian Giles, and Ron Hodges, the three scheduled hitters for the Mets. Steve Zabriskie along with Ralph Kiner.
Mike Howard blown out by Carlton his first time up, struck him out on 3 pitches. The last one a vicious curveball, and he starts him off with a breaking ball there and misses.
Kind of a surprise, Ralph, for Mike to get the start in right field.
Well, they wanted a right-hand batter in there. And Howard grounds the breaking ball to the shortstop, Ivan De Jesus, and as usual, makes it a close play as he hustles down the line. So De Jesus picks up an assist. That is his first chance in this game, and it brings up Brian Giles.
That might be a psychological victory right there for Howard to ground a ball off of Carlton, as he had mentioned before the game that Carlton had blown him away. As you look at Rusty Staub in the Mets dugout.
Rusty, at one time a playing coach for the Mets, and a great curveball right there to Brian Giles. Giles beat out a bunt for a base hit with a perfectly executed bunt his first time up, and he has Schmidt at third base shortened up. And the fastball fouled away.
Jim Fry, the Mets hitting instructor, saying before the game, Ralph, that he feels that Brian Giles has made more progress this past spring than any other player on the ball club at the plate. And from what we saw, he did drive the ball and hit with more power than we thought he had.
Infield moves back now with a 2-strike count. As you look at Jim Fry, who is the batting instructor, and a good one. One and 2.
They call Brian Giles ice. Just like George Gervin of the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA.
And it's chopped again to the shortstop side. Ivan De Jesus picks up the out. 2 assists for the fine fielding shortstop, and that'll bring up Ron Hodges. Hodges struck out his first time up after a hard battle with some foul balls. Now batting for the second time. Steve Carlton with 7 strikeouts through his first 4 2/3 innings. We were talking earlier about Bob Feller and his no-hitter on opening day, the only one pitched on opening day. Feller in that game had 8 strikeouts.
Well, there's another good pitch from Carlton. He's really making it tough on Hodges. As what you mentioned earlier, Ralph, Hodges does not see that much left-handed pitching, and when you haven't, and the one you go up against is Carlton, that's doubly tough.
And you wonder if the manager likes you. He really fed him to the lions here today, but necessity brought about because John Stearns, who normally would be catching against Carlton, is on the disabled list. Carlton with a count of 1-1. Good fastball.
I believe that's some of our color guard that presented the colors prior to the game today.
Big marching bands out here in the opening day ceremonies. And the breaking ball. Carlton in his major league career has struck out 3,440 batters. He is 4th in the all-time list. And he misses right here, 3 and 2. Johnson heads the list at 3,508. Nolan Ryan, 3,494. Gaylord Perry, 3,452. And then Steve Carlton. There's Neil Allen, the Mets' #1 relief man. And a fly ball out to shallow right center. Bob Dernier makes the play, and the Mets go down in order. That's 10 in a row for Steve Carlton. He has settled into a groove. And the score at the end of 5, it's the Phillies nothing, the Mets nothing. Coming up for Philadelphia in the 6th inning, Steve Carlton, Pete Rose, and Joe Morgan. Now here's a word from OTB. Well, it was billed as a pitcher's dream matchup. Tom Seaver against Steve Carlton, and it has turned out to be just that.
Boy, it certainly has, Ralph, with each pitcher having given up only 2 hits so far, and both pitching shutouts through 5 complete innings of play. And as we go to the top of the 6th, it's lefty against Seaver, as Carlton will lead it off for the Phillies.
Carlton flied out to the left field corners first time up. And that's strike 1. Seaver has had an outstanding record against Steve Carlton.
Boy, he has. They've faced each other 16 previous times over the years, and Tom has an 11-3 edge with 2 no decisions. That's a huge advantage.
Which also accounts for the fact that the Mets have defeated Carlton 31 times. Carlton has won 27 times against the Mets.
And as a Met, Seaver is 7-0 against Carlton.
So Seaver back with a fastball, and the ball fouled off in the count at 1-2. Seaver, with this opening day assignment, has tied the record for the most opening day assignments. Original record set by Walter Johnson at 14. And that's ball 2. 2 balls and 2 strikes.
We mentioned earlier Carlton has 7 strikeouts already in the game through 5 innings. His high on opening day is 8 strikeouts in an opening day ball game. That was in 1981.
Ground ball foul. They're underway at Boston, and the Blue Jays scoring 4 runs in the top of the 2nd, leading the Red Sox 4-0 after 1.5.
Valentine's beer.
There's Bobby Valentine and Frank Howard, the base coaches for the New York Mets. Frank moving over to first base this year, and Bobby in at third, up from the minor league organization where he was an instructor last year. In the National League, 2 games have been held up by rain. The start of those games, Pittsburgh at St. Louis and Montreal at Chicago, both have been held up by rain. San Diego is scheduled at San Francisco later this afternoon, and L.A. at Houston tonight as the National League gets underway in earnest today.
Strike 3. So Seaver picks up his 4th strikeout. Got Carlton with a fastball. And coming up now for Tom Seaver will be Pete Rose.
Here's the pitch again, and you talk about location as a pitcher. This is perfect location on the outside corner. Carlton just couldn't pull the trigger on it, and he's sitting back down as Kingman comes in to talk to Seaver.
Both Seaver and Kingman attended the University of Southern California. Kingman was a pitcher in college.
And a good pitcher, an excellent pitcher. But
Yes.
he hit so well they had to move him so he could play every day.
He pitched a couple of innings for the San Francisco Giants. And a bunt attempt. So Pete Rose, who was struck out his first time up and lined out as second, batting for the 3rd time, attempting to bunt his way on.
Pete second on the all-time hit list behind Ty Cobb. He needs 131 hits this season to reach that 4,000 hit mark.
Pete Rose leads all active players in 3 base hits in the major leagues. Not a power hitter. And a good pitch by Seaver, 1-2.
Pete didn't like it. Jawing with home plate umpire Doug Harvey. Right around the knees. It was close.
And Seaver got him again. Seaver with the same pitch. Strikes out Rose for the 2nd time, and that is his 5th strikeout. We'll look at it again.
Seaver and Rose, of course, were teammates in Cincinnati briefly. And I'm sure there's a lot of satisfaction in that strikeout for Tom Seaver.
So now 2 away on strikeouts, and Joe Morgan, the batter. Morgan has walked and struck out. Comeback player of the year last year with the San Francisco Giants. Twice the most valuable player in the National League, back-to-back seasons.
And he's one of 11 players on the Philadelphia roster who were not with the Phillies opening day last year. That's a big change.
A fly ball out to left center. Might drop in. It does. Morgan trying for two. The relay. And Morgan is out. Joe Morgan, with 2 men away, gambling, trying to get into scoring position and thrown out.
You'll see two mistakes here. Not in the fact that the ball fell in, as Mookie gave it every opportunity, just didn't have enough speed to get to it, and if Mookie doesn't, nobody does. But as Foster picks it up and relays it, the relay man did not turn around quickly and throw. Then Morgan overslid the bag, and Giles was there to make the tag. Baylor a little slow in getting the relay in, but Giles was able to keep the ball in his glove and make the second tag on Morgan after he overslid the bag. And so it's a 1-2-3 inning, even though Morgan gets a base hit.
No runs, 1 hit, and no one left on base. And the score at the end of 5 1/2, the Phillies nothing and the Mets nothing. Coming up for the Mets in their half, Tom Seaver, Mookie Wilson, and Bob Baylor. Now here's a word from Michelob Light. Well, let's look at it once again. Morgan sliding by the bag, and then fortunately for the Mets, unable to get back to it, and the tag made by Brian Giles to end the inning.
Giles had the ball waiting for him, and Morgan put his left hand on the bag, and Giles very calmly reached out, tagged his right hand before he could get his left hand on the bag.
And we're going to have a pinch hitter now for Tom Seaver. It is switch hitting Wally Backman. Wally, a better hitter from the left-hand side, but batting from the right-hand side against Steve Carlton. Seaver will be leaving the ball game, allowing no runs and giving up just 3 base hits. Seaver working 6 innings of this ball game, and of course he was hampered during spring training by a pulled muscle. And the Mets taking him out of the ball game, and Seaver a chance to win it if they can score a run here and hold on. Backman batting with a 1-2 count, and he fouls off the pitch.
Wally had a good spring. He hit .325 in spring training this year, had 3 RBIs, appeared in 15 games. There weren't too many more than 15 games with the weather the way it was down there.
2-2 the count to Wally Backman. Backman last year a .272 hitter with a record of 261 at-bats. Strike 3. So a strikeout for Steve Carlton, his 8th. He has now retired 11 in a row. Here it is again the fastball. Local 1101, Communications Workers of America. Your professional telephone people want you to know that you can still get free telephone repair house calls. Just dial 611. They'll be there to help. Now Mookie Wilson, who has struck out twice, batting for the 3rd time with 1 away here in the bottom half of the 6th inning. No score. Curveball, grounded foul, strike 1.
Mookie's had a tough day against Carlton. He struck out looking in the 1st, struck out swinging in the 3rd. And here's Doug Sisk, a young sinker baller, warming up in the bullpen with Mets coach Gene Dusan.
And back with a fastball to count 1 ball, 1 strike.
Mookie has an unusual hobby for a ball player, maybe not too unusual, but I haven't heard of it a lot. He likes to bake. He and Rusty Staub ought to get together, turn out some good food.
Well, he can cook on those base paths.
He can, and in center field.
And Mookie misses the fastball, 2-2. Mookie last year batted .279, set a club record in stolen bases with 58. Rusty Staub.
The gourmet.
3-2.
They've been working a lot with Mookie to get him to cut down on his strikeouts. He had over 100 last year, and he's already struck out twice this season in his first 2 times up.
And he fouls off the fastball. Carlton has not walked a batter in this game. And he has struck out 8. Carlton holds the record for most strikeouts in a single 9-inning game at 19. And when he struck out 19, he lost the game. 2 home runs by Ron Swoboda. This one out to right field to Pete Rose, his first chance, and Pete, who has played the outfield, makes the play. Rose has been an all-star at first base, second base, third base, and the outfield.
But you know what, Ralph? Pete's last game in right field was in 1971. That's the last time he started in right field, 12 years ago.
That'll bring up Bob Baylor. Baylor is 0 for 2. He has popped up to third and flied out to center field. And the fastball a strike. And that curveball popped to shallow right field, and again Rose is there, and again a 1-2-3 inning. 13 in a row for Steve Carlton, and the score at the end of 6. The Phillies nothing, the Mets nothing. Coming up for Philadelphia, Gary Matthews, Mike Schmidt, and Tony Perez. Now a word from Dotson.
Well, as we go to the top of the 7th inning, Steve Zabriskie now joined by Tim McCarver as Mr. Kiner has left us to prepare for the opening edition of Kiner's Corner after the game today here on WOR-TV. And Doug Sisk will be the new Mets pitcher, the young sinker baller, as Wally Backman pinch hit for Seaver in the last inning. Sisk, who had a 2.77 ERA this spring and a record of 0-1 in 7 games, pitched 13 innings, gave up 14 hits, 4 earned runs, walked 4 and struck out 6. Hard-throwing right-hander, and he has impressed Tim really from the first day of spring training.
Well, as you said, he's got a good sinker and a good slider. And, you know, you're talking about going from the sublime to the very, very young. 2 older pitchers, and now young Doug Sisk. 6'2", 210-pounder from Renton, Washington. Now makes his home in Tacoma. Had an excellent 11-8 season at Jackson, Mississippi last year. Was 0-1 with a 1.04 ERA with the Mets in 8 2/3 innings pitching. He'll get a lot of ground balls, I'll tell you that. As the Phillies send up Gary Matthews, Mike Schmidt, Tony Perez, the heart of the order. Phillies have 3 hits, the Mets 2. Seaver and Carlton have both been brilliant. And now young Doug Sisk. And what do you think's running through his mind right now?
Packed house in Shea opening day, and he's coming in to relieve a legend in New York.
With the score 0-0.
Yes.
Top of the 7th inning. Sinker inside.
He's earned his shot, but now that he's earned it, he may not be too sure if he wants it.
1-0 to Gary Matthews, who has twice grounded out. Another sinker inside, 2-0.
Sinkers that don't sink can become balls that are hit a long way. And Doug had better get that ball down. If he gets it over the plate that high, Gary might lose it for him.
There's a slider strike, 2-1. He missed with 2 sinkers and then threw Gary Matthews a slider. Hubie Brooks on the line at third to protect against the extra base hit. Another slider. Strike 2. Very interesting command of his slider after falling behind with 2 fastballs. Doug Sisk comes in with 2 sliders. Sinker, he struck him out. First strikeout of the '83 season for Doug Sisk, and a good one.
Boy, after not getting that sinker over and not getting it down at all the first 2 times he threw it, he really had Matthews set up beautifully when he finally did bring it in, and the bottom dropped out of it. Here's Mike Schmidt. Schmidt's 0 for 2 as well. He flied out to left field both times up.
Must have heard you about keeping that sinker down. A slider misses low. And Ron Hodges questions that call. Doug Harvey doing an excellent job behind the plate, as he always does. First base umpire Jerry Dale, Frank Pulley at second, Jerry Crawford at third. Sinker, swing and a miss. Took something off of that pitch.
One of the things George Bamberger likes about Sisk, and that he has shown this spring, is that he can change speeds on his pitches, and he throws hard enough to make that very effective.
1-1 to Schmidt. Slider misses outside, 2-1. Baylor in the hole at third. Brooks on the line. Outfield very deep and straight away as Schmidt has power to all fields. Sinker jams him, and it's fouled off. 2-2 as we look at the hitting hero, if there's been one today. Tony Perez, who's had 2 base hits, only 5 in the 6 innings played so far by both clubs. Michael Jack Schmidt from Dayton, Ohio. Went to Ohio University. What an athlete he is. Sinker downstairs. 3-2, the count full to Schmitty.
And it wasn't too many years ago that Mike Schmidt would not be playing today on opening day, having undergone knee surgery during spring training.
That is so true.
Really amazing how quickly, with orthoscopic surgery, a player can come back after knee surgery.
A slider had missed downstairs in the same area as that first pitch, and Doug Sisk issues the second walk of the game for the Mets. And Carlton has walked none in his 6 innings of work. So Schmidt's the base runner. Kingman holding him close at first. And Tony Perez, who's 2 for 2, is the batter. Check the swing. Did he go around? First base umpire Jerry Dale says no. 1-0 to Tony Perez. Schmidt is a running threat normally, but I doubt that he will be running on that sore knee of his. Taking no chances. Mediocre lead at first. Fake break. And the count is 2-0 to Tony Perez.
You know, Tim, there's been a lot of talk about the age of the Phillies, and Tony Perez is one of the players that's mentioned in the conversations about that. But here he comes through, hits .386 in the spring, and as we were talking before the game, was 0 for his last 11 in spring training.
That's
what would
right.
he have hit if he'd hit
600?
5 or 6? Yes, probably. .386 this spring, and 2 for 2 today.
Throw to first, Schmidt back easily. Pitch to Perez. Nice play by Ronnie Hodges. A catcher anticipates a breaking ball in the dirt. That was a sinker in the dirt. Much tougher to handle, and Hodges made a nice play.
Here's another look at it, and you watch Ron Hodges react to this as the ball goes down. Not only does he go down, but he moves over to get his body in front of the ball. Something that is very, very important, because if you keep it in front of you, you have no problem.
Only with a guy throwing a sinker can a catcher get his body in front of it, because you don't have the velocity that you do on a guy like Carlton or
That's right.
Tom Seaver. 3-0. Whack, double play ball. Baylor turned it. Double play for the Mets. Tony Perez hit it hard, but right at Brian Giles. Scored 4 to 6 to 3. And Doug Sisk gets that ground ball in a key spot.
One of the effective things about a sinker ball pitcher in relief is that he will get those ground balls.
And he got a big one there. No runs, no hits, no errors, and nobody left. At the end of 6.5, it's the Mets nothing and the Phillies nothing. Coming up, Kingman, Foster, and Brooks for the Mets. No score after 6.5. You know, fans, one of the handiest items offered by the Mets can be yours free this weekend at Shea. It's the new all-color 1983 Mets team calendar, courtesy of the Mets and Getty Oil. And all fans can get one by being at Shea on either Saturday or Sunday when the Mets meet the world champion Cardinals. The calendar features color photos of your favorite Mets, the full season schedule, player birthdays, and interesting historical facts about the club. So plan to be on hand for calendar weekend on Saturday or for the doubleheader on Sunday when the Mets meet the Cardinals on this year's opening weekend at Shea. This copyrighted telecast is presented by authority of the New York Mets and WOR-TV and is intended solely for the private, non-commercial use of our audience. Any publication, reproduction, retransmission, or other use of the pictures descriptions, and accounts of this game without the express written consent of the New York Mets and WOR-TV is prohibited. And to show you how fast both pitchers work, we didn't get in our disclaimer until the 7th inning.
They're moving right along.
I'm telling you. All right, the Mets will try to get something started here in the bottom of the 7th. They'll send the heart of the lineup, Kingman, Foster, and Brooks. Dave has struck out twice. Ball outside. Kingman, 99 RBIs with his 37 home runs last year. Good time for it here. Phillies employing that shift on the left side of the infield. Fastball outside. Kingman becomes ever so dangerous when he's ahead in the count.
Gives him the opportunity to really let loose, which is what he likes to do. There you see the shift with Morgan over and shallowed up, as Tim mentioned, probably because of his arm limitations, whereas other teams will play the second baseman over to the side of the bag, but much deeper.
2-0 pitch, slider fouled off. That's the one incredible thing about Carlton. He has such confidence in that breaking ball. He'll throw it anytime, and that's indicative of that point. 2-0 slider in a tie game in the 7th.
Particularly to a good breaking ball hitter like Kingman.
That's right. Well, Dave's a good breaking ball hitter, but his slide, I wouldn't call Carlton's slider a breaking ball.
That's true.
Even though it breaks, it's more of a hard stuff type of pitch, not an off-speed pitch.
Very true.
Ball hit well to left, base hit. Dave Kingman gets the 3rd hit of the ball game for the Mets. And George Foster's the hitter. Foster 1 for 2.
Here it is again. Watch Kingman stay with this pitch as it goes down. And Kingman just lofts it on a soft line drive into left. Matthews playing Kingman so deep near the warning track that there was no chance for him to come and get the ball. Nice swing by Dave Kingman. And we talked about what a good breaking ball hitter he is. There you get a good opportunity to see how he does it.
Action in the Phillies bullpen right now. Big Ron Reed up and throwing. Nobody out. Kingman at first. Throw to first. Back in time.
You know, fans, the Mets' newest publication, Mets Inside Pitch, will be available to all fans this April. Mets Inside Pitch, a 32-page tabloid newspaper, much like the Sporting News. It's just $19.95 for 20 issues, 2 per month during the season, and a 1 month in the off-season. For information on how to obtain your subscription to Mets Inside Pitch, call the Mets offices at 212-507-METS. That's 507-METS to order Mets Inside Pitch.
And the Mets are trying to look for an inside pitch right here. George Foster gets one away. 1-1 to George. Steve Carlton has never pitched a no-hitter. He's got a 3-hitter working now. He has also never led the league in percentages, yet he's 3rd in active pitchers with a .608 lifetime percentage. Fastball just misses outside, 2-1.
One reason Carlton probably hasn't led the league in percentage, Tim, is because he gets so many starts. You know, he's bound to lose a game. He's so healthy, so consistent, that he has more starts than anybody else as we look at Hubie Brooks on deck.
To solidify that point, Carlton has a record of 427 starts in a row without a relief appearance, dating back some 11 years.
The law of averages is going to catch up with you. You're going to lose some of those games.
That's true.
So that's going to hurt your overall average every season. Plus, Carlton has, for all the great teams he's been on, has also been on many teams that were not strong contending.
The floundering Phillies of '72, as a matter of fact, only won 54 ball games all year, 59, and Carlton won 27 of them. Swing and a miss and a bad slider down. Understandable. The count's 2-2.
One of the problems George Foster had last year, and one of the reasons he hit 247, and one of the things he's worked on very strongly this spring, was committing himself too early, trying to pull the ball, swinging over the pitches just as he did that time.
And actually, when you do that, you commit with your hands and you take something away from your power. That's why waiting with the hands back is a key element in good hitting. Swings and fouls it. It's been a home run in a round park.
He didn't wait on that one
How
either.
can you pull a ball that much?
He pulled that almost directly behind him and hit it into the second deck.
So Foster obviously looking for the slider down and in, got it, and rips it about as foul as you can get. And the count remains the same, 2-2. Kingman 2 steps off at first, not a base running threat. Drill to right center. Rose can't get it. Kingman had to hold up on the play, but the Mets have the first 2 hitters on here in the 7th inning. George Foster drilling the ball to right field as he's done all spring.
The work is paying off, and George Foster's ability to concentrate and work this spring is paying off. One of the things they've worked so hard with him is driving the ball to right center field. There is the perfect example of him going with the pitch. Kingman, of course, as Tim mentioned, had to hold up because there was a remote possibility Rose could get to the ball. Now runners at first and second for the Mets with nobody out as we are in the bottom of the 7th inning with no score.
That is only the second Met to reach second base all day. Bunting situation, rotation play. Carlton does not go to second base. In that rotation play, as Carlton looks at Schmidt, Schmidt comes in. De Jesus covers third, and Morgan goes to second when Carlton's not pitching. When he's pitching, De Jesus goes to third, and Morgan goes to first. It opens up the middle of that infield. He's going to bunt. Beautiful bunt. Schmidt will have to hurry. Base hit, Hubie Brooks. Schmidt laid back too late. Hubie Brooks drops a perfect bunt down the third base line. And with 3 straight singles, the Mets have the bases loaded and nobody out. Oh, boy.
You wonder why in batting practice you work on bunting. This is why. We've seen 2 perfect bunts by the Mets today. One by Brian Giles and now another one by Hubie Brooks. This one even more perfect under the circumstances. And Schmidt, although he made a great play and a good attempt, as you see him charging the ball from the beginning, had really no chance, even if he had thrown the ball on the bag, to get Hubie Brooks.
Joe Morgan, as a matter of fact, made a nice play coming up with that ball to save a run. Young Mike Howard, the hitter, he's 0 for 2. He struck out, grounded out, infield in. Base hit left field. Kingman has scored. George Foster held, thinking it may have been a line drive. The Mets lead it 1-0. Bases loaded, still nobody out.
Mike Howard, who got the start because he hits from the right side and had never had much success against Carlton, gets the biggest base hit of his career, certainly so far, as he drives in the first run of the ball game against the toughest pitcher in the National League.
Manager Pat Corrales out to talk to Lefty right now. Lefty doesn't want to hear it. If there's one guy that detests the manager coming out to the mound for any reason other than taking him out.
What do you think he said right here?
It's not permissible for me to say. I've heard it. 4 straight base hits in this inning, the 7th, have plated the first run of the ball game. The Mets lead it 1-0, still nobody out, and still the infield in. Had the infield not been in when Howard hit the ball, they surely would have gotten 1 on the play.
That's right, and possibly 2, although Howard does run very well.
Brian Giles is 1 for 2. He also bunted in that second inning, and he grounded to short. Fastball outside.
We were talking earlier, Tim, when Ralph was with me, about the progress Brian Giles has made and how Jimmy Fry thinks that he's made more than anyone else. As you look at Howard at first base, the 2 Howards, actually.
Slider in the dirt. Nice play, Diaz. But Brian Giles went for a bad slider in the dirt. It's 1-1.
But one of the reasons that Giles, I think, has made so much progress is his confidence. He's hitting the ball with so much more confidence than he has in the past. And he feels like he can go up there and get a hit just about any time.
It's amazing what a good hitting 2-week period can do for your confidence.
That's right.
I agree with you. Ball driven to right. Rose has got it. That's going to score a run. Foster scores. Brooks moves to third. 2-0 Mets. Good piece of hitting by young Brian Giles to drive in the run. Sacrifice fly for Giles. And the Mets still have runners at first and third and 1 out.
Ryan driving that ball to the opposite field, something they've also been working with him a great deal on. And Pete made a good play on the ball and, of course, has a strong arm, but really has no chance. The ball was hit so deeply, a perfect hit in that situation. And Brooks was able to go over to third base. Howard still at first base. Runners at first and third, now with 1 out, and Ron Hodges the batter.
I'll tell you what, you're in a squeeze situation. Ronnie does not hit lefty very well. Throw to first base. Howard back in time. Infield back in double play depth. That is not to say, obviously, that Ronnie cannot hit lefty, but he is a very, very tough assignment for a left-handed hitter.
And with only 1 out, and a 2-run lead, the squeeze really in order here if George Bamberger decides to go for it.
There's a fastball outside corner for a strike, 0-1. More clubs are inclined, if they do squeeze, to squeeze when the hitter's ahead of the pitcher, as we look at Hubie at third. The reason for that is you discount the pitch out if the hitter's ahead of the pitcher. Hung in there well. Hodges is battling lefty. He's 0 for 2, but with the count 1 ball and 2 strikes, he fouled off several pitches his first time up, and he hit the ball well, but at or near the last time up. And 2 to Ron Hodges. Tough hitting situation. Slider outside. 1-2.
The Mets now with 6 hits off Carlton. They came into this inning with only 2. 4 straight singles and a sacrifice fly have led to a 2-run Mets lead in the bottom of the 7th inning.
The Mets have 6 hits. They've committed an error. The Phillies have 3 hits, committed no errors. They are behind, as you said, Steve, 2-zip. Fouls this one off. A valiant effort by Ron Hodges.
That was almost close to a swinging bunt.
He knows that Carlton's not going to come inside on him.
George Bamberger,
Jimmy Fry.
Bambi, his own pitching coach this year, certainly has experience in that area, handling the Baltimore pitchers for many years.
If you do a bad job, you can't fire yourself. You wouldn't dare, right?
That's right.
Carlton may try to come home. He got him at home. Steve Carlton fumbled the ball, was in doubt as to whether to go to second base or not. He saw Hubie Brooks, made the play shrewdly to home, and they get the lead runner.
Very close to a score by Brooks, as Carlton, with good presence of mind, was able to turn around, really threw the ball off balance, but fortunately for him, didn't have far to throw it. As you see, he's throwing off the wrong foot, sidearm, and Hubie took a look at Doug Harvey in a bit of a disagreement. But
one problem Bo Diaz had last year was blocking the plate. He had no problem then, and Doug Sisk is going to hit for himself. Runners at first and second, 2 out. Fouls this one back. Pretty good rap for a guy who may be at his first time hitting in professional baseball.
That's right.
The designated hitter is used in the minor leagues. Doug may have come up once last year. I don't know. He swings and misses.
He did. Excuse me, he did, but he had no at-bat. So this is his first at-bat in the major leagues, and probably, as you said, his first at-bat in quite some time.
Against Steve Carlton, who struck out 8 thus far.
What a way to start.
Slider misses inside. 1-2 to Sisk.
Howard, the runner at second base, has good speed. There is Mike, and could score on just about any kind of a hit.
The outfield is very shallow, though. He'll have to get an extra jump at second. However, Sisk does strike out. The 9th strikeout victim for Carlton, a high for his opening day performance. However, the Mets do score 2 runs on 4 hits. There were no Philly errors, and 2 Mets left stranded at the end of 7 complete innings of play. The New Yorkers have taken a 2-0 lead over the Phillies. And now a delightful word from Michelob Light.
One more set, guys.
As we go to the top half of the 8th inning, with the Mets now leading 2-0 over the Phillies, we want to remind you that the annual Mayor's Trophy game will be held very early this season And the Mets will try to even the series at 9 wins apiece when they take on the Yankees here at Shea Stadium on Thursday night, April 21st at 7:35. For ticket information, call the Mets ticket office at 212-507-TIXX.
All right, Tim McCarver along with Steve Zabriskie. Nice job on that promo, Steve-O.
Oh, thank you.
2-0 ball game Mets. Bo Diaz, the hitter, he's 0 for 2. He's popped up to center field, shallow center, and to first base. 0-1 to Bo Diaz. There's a strike. 0-2 to Bo. Talk about presence of mind. Young Doug Zist, after falling behind Gary Matthews, struck him out as a leadoff hitter the last inning. He walked Schmidt, and Perez hit into a double play. Diaz fouls it back, 0-2. We got some damage in St. Louis at Busch Stadium. Their opening game. Lee Lacy homered for the Pirates in the first, the solo homer. And the Cards have come back with one. It's 1-1 after 1. Bob Porsche against Candelaria. Jammed him with the fastball. Fought off nicely by Diaz. Well, Tug McGraw, obviously the left-hander, and Porfi Altamirano warming up for the Phillies. Very warm greeting by the fans here at Shea for Tug McGraw in the introductions.
They still remember You Gotta Believe from 1969.
Well, a jammer that falls into right field, a little parachute that Diaz hit, guarding the place nicely. And he's the leadoff runner for the Phillies here in the 8th inning. He may have, they may have a pinch runner for Bo.
Ivan De Jesus is going back in the dugout as well. De Jesus, the next scheduled hitter, and apparently they're going to pinch hit for Ivan.
Looks like Bobby Molinaro, who came to the Phillies last year from the Chicago Cubs. He was purchased by the Phillies.
For Ivan De Jesus, number 26.
And they're not going to pinch run, apparently, for Diaz,
well,
he's still at first base.
I said that probably prematurely, Steve, because the Phillies are behind by 2 runs. And should they tie this ball game, they'll need Diaz's bat in extra innings. Bobby Molinaro.
Bobby, in only his 5th year of Major League service, out of New Jersey, across the river. Went to high school in Newark.
Has one of the most unusual batting styles in baseball. He has antsy feet when he hits.
He came over to the Phillies from the Chicago Cubs last season, September 1st, as a matter of fact.
Now watch, if you fans out there, this is not the way to hit. Now watch how much foot movement he has. Fastball misses outside, 1-0.
Took batting lessons from Fred Astaire, I guess. But he does dance around in the box.
He represents the tying run right now. Kingman behind Diaz at first base. Bo slow a foot, not a threat to run. Fastball outside, 2-0 to Bobby Molinaro. Bob Dernier waits on deck. Doug Harvey wants to check the ball, and Doug Sisk gladly throws it in. Orozco and Allen heating in the bullpen for the New York Mets. Orozco, the left-hander. Allen, of course, the right-hander. Ball hit well. Brian Giles is going to get the lead runner, and Molinaro, who runs very well. They had no chance on him at first base, but the important thing is Diaz is out at second. And Doug Sisk continues to get the ground balls.
Look at it again. It really sunk that time. Molinaro stayed with it. And Brian Giles, who's impressed not only with his bat but his fielding this spring, turns it over to Baylor, covering very nicely to get the lead runner in plenty of time. One out, one on still.
And we're going to have another pinch hitter for the Philadelphia Phillies. The top pinch hitter in the National League last year, Greg Gross, is going to hit for Bob Dernier.
Now I can see Pinch hitting for Ivan de Jesus, who hits from the right side against Sisk. But Dernier, who's been switch hitting, but hitting from the left side here, I don't know. I guess that Bob just hasn't been hitting the ball that well.
Well, he doesn't hit with a lot of authority, and you want a guy who's going to pull it in that hole. Kingman holding Molinaro close. However, Greg Gross hits most of his balls to left field. He's like Dane Orge of the St. Louis Cardinals. He has a natural left field stroke. Sinker outside, 1-0 to Greg Gross. One out, Molinaro at first. Kingman actually should be playing behind him at first base, because the Mets have a 2-run lead, and Molinaro would be taking a chance if he were to try to steal. Fastball up, 2-0 to Greg Gross, and Sisk continues to fall behind the hitters. Lenny Matusak on deck. Lenny on that bobsled in the Phillies system over the last few years, up and down, up and down. 2-0 pitch to Gross. Outside, 3-0.
This is really, except for the first inning that Doug Sisk came in, and obviously that had to be, as you look at George Bamberger in the Mets dugout, that had to be a heart-stopping moment for him. But this is really the first time he's really been tested here.
I'll tell you what'll be interesting. If George decides to go to the bullpen, it'll be interesting to see if he brings in the left-hander, Orozco, or the right-hander to make Matusak hit, because the Phillies are a much more formidable bench ball club from the right side than they are from the left. We'll see. 3-0 to Greg Gross. There's the strike, 3-1. Great baseball cliche. A walk's as good as a hit.
There's the Mets bullpen with Orozco and Allen. They both look like they're ready to go should the call come.
Fastball is low, a belated call by Doug Harvey. He didn't agree with it. Greg Gross. We'll see.
Judge for yourself. Right across the knees on the inside corner. Good movement on the pitch by Sisk. It's 3-2.
We'll see if Molinaro's running. He does not run. Fastball foul back, 3-2. And because he's not running, Kingman should be playing behind him. Bamberger electing to go with Dave holding him on. To give you that extra step. Should Gross pull a ball in the hole. One out, Molinaro at first. 2-0 Met lead here in the top of the 8th inning. Fastball foul back.
I would assume that Kingman is not holding him on because, as you mentioned earlier, is holding him on because you mentioned that Gross goes to left field, and had there been another pinch hitter into the game, he might not be.
Okay, I'll buy that. Fouls this one off as Greg Gross is showing his ability to fight balls off the other way.
Pat Corrales, the Philadelphia manager, pacing the dugout.
Actually, Foster and Mookie Wilson in center are too deep. Gross doesn't drive the ball that way, but he does have a good base hit stroke. He can't drive the ball to left field. Took something off a fastball, and Greg continues to foul it off the other way. Gross went through 96 at-bats last year before he struck out. The leading pinch hitter in the National League.
And he's showing you why he doesn't strike out very often right now, because those pitches by Doug Sisk are good pitches.
Of course, it's a combination where you wouldn't think a strikeout's in order, because Sisk is not a strikeout pitcher. Grounded to second. Nice play, Giles. And Bob Baylor again gets the lead runner. Brian Giles going to his left. A lot of second basemen would go safely to first. Giles makes a nice play by getting the lead runner, and they're 2 away.
Watch Brian Giles glide over for this ball, and how nicely he turns, even though he did turn his back to the play a little bit, and makes the good throw. Staying with the ball and making the good throw as Baylor's covering. And again, no chance to get the double play. 2 fielders' choices in a row, and 2 outs, 4-6. After the opening single by Bo Diaz, still the runner at first, but now with 2 out.
Fastball misses to pinch hitter Lenny Matusak. makes his home in Clearwater, Florida. Did not do well in his short time with the Phillies last year. In only 39 at-bats, he had 3 hits for a .077 average. He does have some punch, however. Changeup. And I also am impressed by the way Doug Sisk mixes his pitches up.
Throws different pitches, keeps the ball down, and can change speeds effectively on all of them.
You got to love the way Brian Giles glides around second base, don't you?
Oh, he's slick.
The Iceman, affectionately known by his teammates. There's a strike on the outside. 1-2 to Len Matusek. Outfield deep. The flag blowing straight to right field. And Matusek, a low ball hitter with good power, represents the tying run. Struck him out. Change of speed pitch by Doug Sisk gets Lenny Matusek, and a big strikeout that was, as the Philadelphia Phillies went to the well with 3 consecutive pinch hitters and came up short. For them in the top of the 8th inning, no runs, 1 hit, no errors, and 1 left on. At the end of 7 1/2, it's the Mets 2 and the Phillies nothing. Coming up, Wilson, Baylor, and Kingman, top of the order, and now a word from USA Today. Well, the Phillies have a new shortstop in the person of Larry Milburn. Certainly no new face to you New Yorkers. Larry spending his time for about 2 years with the New York Yankees. They also have a new center fielder, Greg Gross, who was a pinch hitter in the 8th. Stays in the ball game. He's the center fielder. He is going out for the glasses right now as Ron Reed is the new pitcher. 6'5", 225-pounder who lives in Atlanta right now. Graduate of Notre Dame University. 40 years old. What a career he has had.
And another reason that the folks who follow baseball, write about it, and talk about it have criticized the Phillies' chances this season and talked about the age factor is because Ron Reed, the guy they still look to be the stopper in the bullpen, is 40 years old.
Of course, with Al Holland, Ronnie had 14 saves at 2.66 ERA last year.
I know. As we go to the bottom half of the 8th inning, Mookie Wilson will lead it off for the Mets, the top of the Mets batting order, followed by Baylor and Kingman, the next scheduled hitters, with the Mets still out in front of Philadelphia 2-0. 2 runs, 6 hits, 1 error for New York. The Phillies, no runs, 4 hits, and no errors. Mookie 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts and a fly out to right, fouls it off. And no balls and 2 strikes. Very quickly, Ron Reed is ahead of Mookie Wilson. Mookie now batting from the left side against the right-hander Reed. Low for ball 1.
Steve Carlton leaves the ball game. After striking out 9 in 7 innings, he gave up 2 runs on 6 hits and 1 error, both runs being earned.
Mookie got a little piece of that one to stay alive. 1 ball and 2 strikes. The count remains on the Mets center fielder.
Tom Seaver left after 6 superb innings of pitching, allowing only 3 hits. His left thigh did tighten up on him a bit.
And he struck out 5.
Yeah, what a great performance by both pitchers.
Beautiful pitch by Reed as he drops one down, and Mookie swings and misses for strike 3. Mookie, who we talked about, trying to cut down on his strikeouts, has struck out 3 times this afternoon.
And that was that forkball that Reed will throw when he's ahead of the hitter, and that ball really, the bottom fell out of that one. Out of the strike zone, but served the illusion of a strike.
Bob Baylor now, a most valuable Met, plays many different positions, is 0 for 3 and looks at strike 1. Bob had a tough spring, batting .098 after hitting .277 last year. Just outside, 1-1.
You are picking Bob Baylor as the most valuable Met for 1980.
No, I said he is a most valuable Met.
It's the difference between and the.
That's right. Not the definitive most valuable Met. 1 of the most valuable minutes. Anyway, it's 1 ball and 2 strikes now on Bales from the Laurel Mountains of western Pennsylvania, where he still spends the off-season in the snow country. Grounds one sharply, a forked ball. Larry Milbourne with his first chance. Strong throw to Perez, and they just get the fleet-footed Bob Baylor to the oohs and ahs of some of the Shea crowd. 2 outs in the inning, and Dave Kingman will be the batter.
Nice play by Larry Milbourne, who is, I guess, normally a second baseman, plays shortstop and third base also. But his arm is more conducive probably for second base or a shallow third base than it is short. Tough play and a nice play there.
Yes, it was, and a good throw. Kingman 1 for 3, struck out looking, struck out swinging in the 4th, and singled and scored. A single to left to lead off the 7th inning, scoring the first Mets run. Of course, facing Reed for the first time. 2 outs, nobody on, 2-0 New York. Bottom of the 8th inning, 1 ball and no strikes on Kingman. Strike 2 and a curveball.
Reed mixes his pitches up very well. He throws a fastball, a slider. In game situations, that's what he goes with.
Ran that one in on Kingman a little bit. Dave fouled it into Bo Diaz's glove.
Up the ladder.
Yeah.
That's the way Dave was very vulnerable when he first came in the league to the balls out of the strike zone up, where Reed went at him then.
And Kingman strikes out for the 3rd time. Very quickly, Ron Reed comes in and takes care of the Mets in order, striking out 2 of the first 3 batters he faces. And at the end of 8 complete innings of play here on opening day in Shea Stadium, it's still the Mets 2 and the Phillies nothing. Now, here's a word from Dotson. Mike Jorgensen will be the new Mets first baseman as we go to the top of the 9th inning in what could be the Phillies' last chance, with the Mets leading 2-0. The top half of the Philadelphia order will face Doug Sisk in his 3rd inning of work in relief of starter Tom Seaver. Pete Rose to lead it off, takes strike 1. Pete 0 for 3, struck out twice, and lined out to George Foster in left. Foul down the left field line. Foster drifting over, but it'll be back about 5 rows in the stands and out of play for strike 2.
A lot of times the hitter can tell by the way the outfield plays him how a pitcher's going to pitch him. For instance, right now, Mookie Wilson into left center field. It would be strange if Doug Sisk throws an off-speed pitch right now. Hubie Brooks now back on the dirt because off-speed pitches are easier to pull than fastballs and sliders.
And Rose fouls that fastball off, out of play behind third base in the Philly dugout. Also, Bob Baylor is well over toward third base at shortstop.
There's a big difference in being 1 run ahead in the 9th and 2 runs ahead in the 9th.
Boy,
big difference.
Doug Sisk, Ron Hodges, and about 50,000 Met fans wanted strike 3, but it's ball 1.
Well, I'll tell you, see Harvey almost come up with his right hand. Check it out. Almost. Then he says it's inside. Close pitch.
That's low, and it's 2-2.
Harvey's called an outstanding game behind the plate.
Yes,
he really has done a good job.
And the pitchers have all done a good job, too.
Tough game to call.
Yes. Outside, and the count is full, so after getting 2 quick strikes on Pete Rose, Doug Sisk runs it to a full count. One of the things that I think separates the good umpires behind the plate from the great umpires behind the plate is the ability to call those major league pitches that are on the black, as the players say.
Yes, sir.
Rose fouls it off. He just did barely get a piece of it and fouled it back between Ron Hodges' legs to stay alive.
You know, actually, the black is not a strike.
That's true.
The black is a half-inch rim of rubber that goes around the plate, and it is not on the plate, but it kind of supports the plate. That's what the corner is, though, usually very, very fine point.
Fouled right at home plate. It's a fair ball, and Hodges will have no problem throwing Rose out at first base.
And I'll tell you, Pete, who shrewdly worked the count to 3-2, swings at a bad ball here. Wasn't even close. Out of the strike zone, in his eyes. And Hodges makes the easy play to first, and that was a big out.
Joe.
Boy, to get that leadoff batter on in the 9th inning trailing 2-0 could be a tremendous edge for the Phillies in their attempt to come back and at least tie the game up, but they did not.
Yeah, especially with the middle of the order coming up.
That's right. Joe Morgan now will be the hitter. Morgan walked in the 1st, struck out swinging in the 4th, and singled to left center field in the 6th inning. He's 1 for 2, facing Sisk for the first time. And looking at ball 1 as Doug Harvey takes a moment to clean off the plate. Good pitch on the outside corner.
What do you think about this, Steve Zabriskie? 51,064 total today, 48,682 paid. The biggest opening day crowd since 1968.
And thank you to the Mets fans for supporting the New York Mets. As you look at the crowd here in Shea, well, that was before the championship season of '69. That was some time ago. Another good pitch by Sisk, and he thought he had him struck out there, as the pitch before was again on the outside part of the plate for strike 2. It's now 2-2 to Morgan.
When your guy has walked 1,711 times, you get pitches like that. It was a ball, however.
Fouled off down the left field line into the stands and out of play. And the count holds at 2-2. 1 out, nobody on. Top of the 9th inning. The Mets leading, going for their 9th consecutive opening day victory, 2-0 over Philadelphia. Doug Sisk, really with a brilliant performance for a rookie coming into a tough situation with a huge crowd on opening day, and in relief of the #1 Mets pitcher in the hearts and minds of all Mets fans, Tom Seaver.
I'll tell you, Steve, you go into the philosophy right now. If he hits at 9 miles, you can't walk him. You got to throw him a strike.
He did. He did walk him. And as you mentioned, if you're going to walk anybody, it's going to be Joe Morgan, because he's going to make you throw strikes.
Second walk of the ball game for Joe.
And the second walk that Sisk has given up since coming into the game. Seaver walked only 1 batter, and now Gary Matthews will be the hitter. 0 for 3 on the day.
And the outfielder's being reminded right now to throw the ball to second base. Morgan is not the important run. The important run is Gary Matthews. You allow Morgan to go to third. The big play is to go to second base with the ball.
Matthews swings and misses. Sisk was the first, or rather Matthews was the first batter that Sisk faced when he came into the game to open the 7th inning. And as you mentioned earlier, Tim, he worked tough against him coming back to strike him out. Hard hit to third base. Brooks knocks it down. They may not get anybody. They won't. Baylor very wisely does not throw the ball, as that ball was very sharply hit, but I've got to believe, Tim, that that's a playable ball.
Well, it was playable. They may give him a hit on that, and they do. But I agree with you. It was playable. Hubie takes 1 step to his left. The ball was hit so hard, Hubie was kind of caught in between, because he wasn't exactly on the line, but he was kind of halfway, semi-protecting against that double. Had he been in straightaway position, it may very well, had he come up with it cleanly, have been a double play.
Well, the problem was not stopping the ball, which he did. It was the fact that it rolled out of his glove after he stopped it, which allowed him, or didn't allow him, to make any kind of a throw.
His only play would have been to second base, but that failed to happen.
Mike Schmidt, the hitter, and Mike lofts one to center field. Mookie coming in, calling off Mike Howard, the right fielder, and that's a big out, because Mike Schmidt could have put the Phillies ahead with 1 swing. And now there are 2 out with runners at first and second. A forced play at any base but home. And to retire Schmidt in a situation like that,
this is one
big out.
This is one of the most impressive things that I've seen in my experience in 23 years is George Bamberger's confidence in a young pitcher like Doug Sisk so early in the season. I mean, here it is, the opening game, and he's allowing him to win or lose the game on his own.
That's right. He's got Neil Allen and Jesse Orozco ready to go. He has not made any kind of a move to go to either one of them, regardless of whether the hitter's been from the right or left side. And here is Tony Perez, Mr. RBI. Strike 1 on the outside corner. 2 outs in the 9th inning. 2-0 New York leading the Phillies with runners at first and second. And 2 out. Doug Sisk pitching for the Mets. In the 3rd day of spring training, I went to George Bamberger and said, who do you like among all these great young pitching prospects? Without hesitation, he said, Doug Sisk. Strike 2.
And that's one of the reasons right there. Good sinker to Tony.
That was the first pitcher that came to George Bamberger's mind on the 3rd day of spring training, and that's the first pitcher he went to in relief And now 50,000 Mets fans are on their feet with 2 strikes, 2 out in the 9th inning. 2-0 New York leading, and Tony Perez facing rookie pitcher Doug Sisk. The Mets going for 9 in a row on opening day. Low, ball 1.
Got to keep in mind, Doug Sisk has never won a major league ball game.
What a time to do it. Although he wouldn't be the winner. Or would he? Yes, he would be, because the runs came in the 7th inning. That's right, bottom of the 7th. I was thinking bottom of the 6th. Doug Sisk can be the winner after a great performance by Seaver. Sisk with an outstanding relief job. Swing and a miss, strike 3. The game is over. The Mets have won 9 straight games on opening day, and Doug Sisk receives the congratulations of his teammates. George Bamberger coming out to congratulate him as well, as the New York Mets have defeated the Philadelphia Phillies before the largest opening day crowd at Shea since 1968, 2-0. Tom Seaver returns to New York, and a bright new young pitching prospect joins the old guard in shutting out the Philadelphia Phillies. We'll be back to wrap it up on opening day at Shea. The Mets winning it 2-0 over Philadelphia. Now here's a word from Michelob Light. Steve Zabriskie along with Tim McCarver to wrap it up for you here at Shea this afternoon. And boy, Tim, we're starting out with the Mets. Our first game, it couldn't have been any better.
Well, I'll tell you, I've rarely seen as exciting an opening day. Carlton worked 7 innings, struck out 9. Seaver worked 6 innings, struck out 5. And I think the key story today was Doug Sisk, who came in, walked 2, struck out 3, wins his first major league ball game, and he's got to be a very, very happy young man right now.
And it also has to be a great indication of things to come for the Mets. There's been a lot of talk about the Mets' young pitching prospects, and right off the bat, we get to see a great performance by one of them.
Well, as we said in that last inning, I think George Bamberger showing confidence in Doug Sisk was a key point, realizing that his ball club, if they play 500 ball this year, they will have a good year, and he knows he's got to do it with the pitching, and that was indicative today when he went a long way with Doug Sisk.
And again, Carlton has problems with the New York Mets, and Carlton has problems on opening day.
Well, he lost his 32nd ball game to the Mets today. It's 27-32 lifetime, and I don't know whether I'd call a game like today having problems. So he pitched a remarkable game. He gave up 6 hits, and as we said, struck out his opening day high of 9 hitters. Of course, I'm prejudiced.
You know him better than anybody else.
I can't say anything bad about him.
Well, how can you? He's one of the greatest pitchers in the history of the game. Just to recap how the Mets scored back in the 7th inning, Dave Kingman led off with a single to left field, and then a single to right center by George Foster, and a bunt single by Hubie Brooks, who laid down the second perfect bunt of the day for the Mets.
Big play.
It was a big play, and it loaded the bases with nobody out. Then an RBI single by Mike Howard, who got a surprise start in right field and came through, driving in the first run. Kingman from third base. A sacrifice fly by Brian Giles, who's also been hitting the ball very well, drove in the second Met run in the person of George Foster from third base. And that was all that Tom Seaver and Doug Sisk needed. That is at the point where Seaver went out of the game and Sisk came in the 7th inning, and that's why Doug Sisk